You're listening to the Reinvest Podcast, where each Tuesday we show business owners and entrepreneurs how to reclaim, reconnect, and refocus their life by bringing you the top real estate professionals in the industry. We'll help you diversify into real estate by equipping you with the tools and tactics to build generational wealth. Your hosts, Garrett Gatton and Seth Ciminillo. All right, we're going to dive in today with some great stuff, maybe a painful topic. Stop treating your investment properties like a side hustle. You're losing lots of money and you will burn out.
Stop doing it.
Don't do it anymore.
Well, and most of the time, when you treat it like a side hustle, like you said, it leads to burnout.
Yeah.
Things aren't being run as efficiently as they could be if you really put some focused thought and some effort into it. And a lot of the times, the barrier to get that stuff set up is just, it feels insurmountable, or it feels like, it's just too much work for one rental or two rentals or a small portfolio. Right. But really, if you get set up once and you build the foundation correctly, it just makes it way easier. So that's what we want to talk about today. As always, we're here. We're back in the studio to share some more great content with you guys. We spend our time to do this to try to add value to our investors and our clients. And so this is free content and this is free stuff. The only thing that we would ask is that the payment would be in the form of a share. So if this added value to you, if this episode adds value, if the podcast adds value, please share it with a friend. Just pass it on to one more person.
And we are going to start doing something sporadically. I don't know how often we're going to do it, but randomly, we are going to start reading reviews that people leave. That was actually a suggestion from my wife. So thanks, babe. You're hot. And so we will. So if you do leave a review, we will, there's a chance that we'll read it here on the air just to encourage.
Ironically, she probably will never listen to this episode.
Dude, she was listening to an episode the other day. I caught her when I came in the room and she was listening to it. I was like,
she's like, shut it off real quick. She's like, I'm not doing anything.
I actually started crying. I was like, it was really funny. So, okay, treat your investments like a business, not a side hustle. You said it earlier. One of the most common mistakes we see investors making is they treat their investments, their real estate rentals, like a side hustle, because at first that's what it is usually.
Yeah.
You don't start like full scale. You kind of incrementally get into it.
And then that's kind of like culture, like, oh, what's the side hustle? Am I going to go wholesale something? Or am I going to do drop shipping? How many of you out there got burnt with drop shipping?
Yep. Crypto, anybody?
Crypto. Like, I'm going to do this side hustle, and it's going to be this way that I can spend not very much time on something and make money. Well, guess what, guys? That doesn't really exist. Right. Usually that's like a red flag where it's going to take you more time and cost you more than you probably initially thought.
Well, and here's the tricky part about real estate. It is relatively low barrier to entry, right? Okay, the biggest barrier is you got to save up money. But then when you're talking about residential real estate, there's plenty of loan products out there for you to get started. So the low barrier to entry means that you can operate kind of sloppily and not know it because it's easy to get into it. And you don't know that you're not running a good business until later.
Yeah.
And it kind of sneaks up on you. And I just talked with a guy today. He's like, oh, rentals, da-da-da-da-da, I got burnt on them. And I'm like, man, if I had $1 every time somebody said they got burnt on a rental, I would be very wealthy.
And usually, most of the time when we ask, well, why'd you get burnt? It leads back to a tenant screening issue. Yeah. And not that the idea of a rental doesn't work. It was you put in a bad tenant and operated it wrong.
Yeah, you were a bad operator.
So, yeah,
that's a business issue.
Yeah, don't put it in a bad tenant. So what are the indicators that you have a side hustle and not a business?
Yeah, so I came up with these. Seth, you can agree or disagree with these. But number one is this is an indicator that you have a side hustle and you're not really running a credible business, is you don't have digital copies of current leases or a rent roll.
Yeah.
And here's my high horse on this. There's no reason you should have paper copies of anything and that be
the only copy.
The only copy.
Yeah.
Everything should be digitized. It should be on a file in your computer, ideally on a file sharing system so that you can access these. And here's why. You will need to reproduce, share, send these documents to people that you're like affiliates and people that you rely on in real estate, like lenders, so readily that it just doesn't make sense to not have that. And if you don't have a rent roll, that is another indicator that you have a side hustle. That's like low level hanging fruit. How much money do I bring in a month?
And here's really big, and I agree, because it's really easy. I think people think it's harder than it is, or if you're not technologically savvy, you're like, oh no, I can't do it. All it is property management software. You get it set up once, and you use it. And guess what? The property management software will take care of your rent roll, and it's also a place to store your leases. So,
and stay to the end of the episode, we have a really practical, specific software that he and I both use that is a great entry-level one for you. Number 2, you can't pull a report of income and expenses. So if you don't have basic accounting services in place to track income and expenses, you do not have a business. You have a side hustle.
Flying by the seat of your pants.
How do you know, like, if you're making money or not? Like, I guess if you see your bank account growing, I mean, that's a poor metric. You have certain expenses that are not just monthly recurring expenses; they come in windfalls. So you need to be able to pull an annual profit loss statement. If you can't do that, then you don't have a business.
Well, and then that'll help you project future income. And so really, I mean, it's pretty easy to say, hey, my mortgage is going to be this every month. My taxes, I'm setting aside this for taxes. I'm setting aside this for insurance. But what we're talking about is being able to track and measure utilities. What are your average utilities across your properties?
Yeah.
And your maintenance expenses. Because you might think, oh, well, I have a maintenance budget. Well, are you over or under? And then if you're over, you're making less money than you think you are. And that may cause you to overspend.
And the only way that you can really dial in your projections when you're looking at a property and saying, should I buy this, is by historical data, which at first you don't have it. And then when you buy property, you build your own historical data. So you need to be able to measure that. You don't have a market. This is number 3. You don't have a marketing or a vetting process for tenants. Tenant screening. Like, here's the deal. Technology has removed every excuse from you to make money in real estate. It really has. Tenant screening is easier than it's ever been. It's automated. There are ways to do it. You can pull background checks, income verification, and it can be at the cost of a tenant, not on you. So there's no excuse not to do this stuff.
And you can usually do that stuff through your property management software.
Right.
Or you can hire it out. You can find a property management company and use them for your management, or you can see if they will lease out your property for you. I mean, and they would do the tenant screening. And so, yeah, like we said in the beginning of the episode, the biggest complaint that we've probably heard from landlords that now have a bad experience on rentals, or your family member had a bad experience on rentals. Why? Well, is because they put a bad tenant in there and they're like, well, the tenant damaged the property and I had to go in there and I spent $5,000. I just spent $10,000 to fix up this unit. And let me tell you, out of all the tenant turnovers I've had, I've not had to do that. My last tenant turnover at one of my properties just recently, I think I spent $200 turning over the unit because it was a good unit.
Yeah.
So I'm not renting out trash, and it was a good tenant. And so they left, and I just cleaned and touched up paint.
Yeah.
And I was out of there.
One time I quite literally did not even clean a unit. I just rented it to somebody else. It was a disgusting unit.
No.
I'm just kidding. No, it was that.
No, but
when you get the right people.
When you get the right people, it's not that bad. And sure, every now and then someone's going to slip through.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Someone's going to kind of trick you. But I would say most of the times it really boils down to a vetting issue.
Yeah.
If you're not vetting your tenant.
I'm going to hit these guys with a Chinese proverb.
Okay.
For all you guys out there that like this kind of stuff, little fortune cookie stuff, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. And that's what we're talking about when you find good tenants.
And really, to Garrett's point with technology, almost everyone's on Facebook.
Right.
So you have even more sources and more resources
What kind of person
now
is this? Yeah.
to be like, I'm just going to go check out their Facebook. And, we shouldn't judge a book by its cover. But it's important to know the kind of activity that they're posting in their public lives.
No, it is. It is relevant.
And because you would do that if you were going to hire someone. Like, employers do this.
Yeah.
And I used to hire. We would do this sometimes. We'd be like, we're kind of on the fence about this applicant. Let's look at their Facebook. And we're like, we're not going to take a chance on this one.
I think I applied one time to the spot you were hiring for. Yeah. I didn't make the cut. Number 4, you do not have vendor relationships. What do we mean by that? Landscapers, snow removal, pest removal, handyman, contractors, power washers, fill in the blank. Anybody that you're going to rely on as a service that's going to help you care for your property, provide a good service to your tenant. If you don't have these relationships in place and you're a solopreneur, you have a side hustle, not a business. Because businesses have relationships and they have people they rely on and services they utilize.
And you might say, hey, I'm just going to do this myself because it is a side hustle. And you could for a time. But this is going to lead to burnout eventually, and especially as you start stacking units and you maybe get 5 rentals.
Hit a ceiling.
5 properties. All of a sudden, you got 5 yards you're going to mow if you can't have the tenant mow it for one reason or another. Snow removal, pest control. I mean, all of a sudden, it becomes unmanageable, and you're like, I'm just burnt out. Well, you could just hire that stuff out. Sure, you're going to be spending a little bit more money, but as you scale, it's really the only sustainable way to operate a business.
Right. No, it's good. And there's a difference in a business and a job, and a business runs without you.
Yeah.
And otherwise you have a job. And I think that's what a lot of real estate investors never get out of, and there's a way to do it. Okay, the next one is you don't have a personal financial statement, fill it out. Admittedly, like 3 years ago, I didn't even know what a personal financial statement was, and you may not know either.
They were like, what's your net worth? How many assets do you have? I was like,
well, my net worth's my network, so there.
I got a couple $100. What are you looking for?
Yeah.
You know,
I got a Camry that I got paid off. You need to have a personal financial statement. Usually this is something provided to you by a bank, and then most people just end up using that and updating it over time. But what is it used for? It's a way for you to establish credibility that you are able to, that you're a good risk that the bank would loan to. And so they're going to look at your assets, your liabilities, your liquidity, and you're going to fill out that personal financial statement. And it's kind of like a credit score a little bit on the commercial lending side of things.
Yeah, they won't require it for a residential loan, like a conventional loan, if you were going to go get like a home owner occupant product. Mm-hmm. But for like any commercial loan application that we've done, it's probably been required.
Yeah. And as you grow in your sophistication and the larger deals you do, you'll lean on that more and more, and you'll have to continue to update that. So I just keep one saved on my computer, and every few months I'll go in and I'll rework it and see if it needs polished or updated. Okay, next one. You collect rents in cash and in person. Yeah,
I did this for a while. Not in cash.
Tell on yourself.
Actually, yeah. No, it was cash. I inherited a tenant, and that was just how he had done it with the previous landlord. And this was such a massive waste of time. And then it kind of gave the tenant an excuse of like, well, you didn't come pick up the rent, so it's not my fault it's late. And I'm like,
it puts the burden on you.
I'm like, why am I spending 20 minutes
to chase this guy down? Hey, are you at the unit? No, I'm not. I'll be there later.
Yeah, to like chase him down. The texting, even the texting back and forth and the organizing, picking up the rent. It was like a massive waste of time. Again, enter in, you force them to bring it to you and not in cash, always be a check, or they have to pay online. I mean, through your property management software. I mean, those, and you need to have it trackable. So that's why we say don't do cash. You need to show those deposits going into your bank account so you can prove to the bank later that you are collecting rent from this tenant, and then that way they can use that for your debt to income ratio.
There is a property management company locally that drew a hard line in the sand and said every tenant will pay online.
Yeah.
And they have like 4 or 5 options for them to do that, but it's all online. It's all digital, not cash, no check. Nobody comes to the office, and they aren't responsible to go pick that up.
Yeah, they have like a feature where through their property management software that they can go to Walmart though, and they can do some sort of like
some kind of black magic there.
Money order through Walmart that is transferred digitally.
Yeah. It's that's crazy.
It really is. I don't quite understand that one, but
last one is this. This is kind of an ouchie one. You're unwilling to go through the eviction process. I've seen this a lot, and usually it's like, well, I know the people, or somebody said, it's like a family friend, and like there's so many flags that are popping up in my mind when this happens, and you're unwilling to go through the eviction process, maybe because you're too close to the relationship, you feel responsible, they're guilt tripping you, they're giving you a story, and you're unwilling, and that's a side hustle, not a business, because at the end of the day, you're losing sight of the bigger picture. And the bigger picture is like you're going to get burnt out so fast if you let your tenants run you. And I understand, like, so for myself, there were times where I was like, you know what? I don't want to be the point of contact for the tenants. So I'm actually going to have a property management company do that, because there's a barrier there, and it's a little bit different where it's like they can't come directly to the owner and say, Garrett, like, let me tell you the story that I'm in right now. Here's why. I don't want to know. I want, like, here's what it is. And oddly enough, when I've had those stories told to me, I removed myself from that and had someone else inserted in the situation. And the stories were still there, but the rent was getting paid because the expectation and the accountability was being provided that I was unwilling to do.
Yeah. And tenants will try to manipulate you. Sometimes it's maybe not malicious, but they just, like everybody, they're trying to get their way.
Right.
But as a landlord, you kind of got to be strong and you got to follow your rules and your processes. And I remember I was helping my brother rent out a property for the first time. And, we had a lease in place, right? A legit lease. So that was like step one, right? He really wanted to rent to this guy, even though maybe he wouldn't have passed like some conventional vetting processes, which is fine. He wanted to take a chance on him, which is cool. And he met us at the property, and he was supposed to bring the first month's rent, and then half the security deposit, and he was going to pay half the security deposit the next month because Alex, my brother, was being generous. And he shows up to the property, and he's like, "Hey, I'm here to sign the lease, but sorry, I just don't have all the money."
Why the heck did you come?
So yeah. But so my brother was like, calls me. He's like, "Hey, where are you at?" I'm like, "I'm almost there." And he's like, he doesn't have all the money. Like, he's missing like $200. What did we do? Did we just try to collect that later? Did we just sign the lease? And I'm like, no.
It's
like,
such a bad sign if you can't start with having them out.
Well, yeah, it was just the conflict. The conflict was so much, and it was awkward, and he didn't know what to do. And I was like, you don't go to Walmart and you put $100 of groceries in your cart.
Right.
And then you go to the checkout line and you're like, hey, I got $80. So I'm just going to take it all, though.
What do we do here?
Yeah.
Looks like you're going to put some groceries back.
Looks like you're not going to buy that. So, yeah, we just told the guy, we're like, sorry, you can't rent this out if you don't have the money, and we are already giving you a break on the front end. And he was like, well, shoot, let me go check my bank account.
Let me check it.
So he went to his bank and sure enough had $200 in there, came back and paid for it all. But it was just kind of like one of those things where it's like, if you give them an inch, they will take a mile.
Yeah.
So you got to, if you
they
have
can. They can.
They can.
Yeah.
And I would say you have to enforce the late fees.
Right.
I see that mistake made all the time too.
And let me give you another hack here. This doesn't work as much if you're, so if you're investing on your own, but you have a spouse, this will still work. It's I need to talk to my partners. That's a great line. Okay.
Great line.
So you'll get pressure from a tenant to make a decision right there on the spot, how you're going to handle the situation. And a lot of the time what I've done, this has really worked for me, and this is a legitimate thing. I have partners in a few of my properties. And so I'll say, you know what? I'm not the only decision maker on this, and I need to go talk to my partners. And that shows them, I'm not going to get the answer right now, and you have to consult with other people. So really, to some degree, whatever decision I get is out of your hands, and it involves other people. And then we're able to collaborate. It gets me out of the situation. We're able to think, not be impulsive, and not have that awkward situation. Yeah. If you're married, you can say, hey, I have a partner in this. It's your spouse, and you legit probably would want to consult with them on how to handle that situation. So,
yep. All right. So those were the kind of some of the indicators that you might be running a side hustle rather than a business, which is okay because we all start somewhere. But the goal is to create this into a business so that way you are not the ones running it. Yep. And so that way you are not feeling the classic landlord burden, the classic landlord burnout. And so that way you guys can actually enjoy the freedom and the benefit that real estate can bring you.
Because one of the benefits is passivity. So again, you don't want to have a job. You don't want to be obligated. You want to continue to move yourselves out of that position so it can run without you, even if you choose to fulfill that.
So how do we run it like a business?
We got 5 ways. 5 ways that business owners run a business, and you're going to apply these to your real estate investing. Okay, number 1 is that businesses have to be profitable to survive.
Yes.
Now that may sound dumb, but here's how it applies to real estate, and this gets missed all the time. One of the immutable laws of real estate investing is invest for cash flow. If you're cash flowing, then you know that you're profitable. You know that you're meeting your expenses. We're going to probably do a future episode that's going to talk about how to underwrite something beyond napkin numbers.
Yeah.
To know if you're really profitable. But you have to be profitable. The more sophisticated investments that you buy, you're going to deal with profit loss statements. And again, that goes back to what we talked about earlier. You got to know how to track your income and your expenses to see, am I profitable? Met with an investor not too long ago, and they were realizing I'm not profitable, but they had a lot of activity going on, and it felt like, man, we got a lot going on, got a lot of properties in the portfolio, but yet they weren't profitable when they really looked under the hood. got in the numbers. And that's not a feeling that you want to experience in a place you don't want to be.
Well, and here's why. In the previous section, we were talking about like, hey, maybe you're not going to be the one doing the landscaping and maintenance anymore because it's going to bog you down. So what do you have to do? On the front end, when you look at a deal, even if you're planning to do that stuff,
budget for it.
You budget for as if you were not, right? You budget for as if, maybe your maintenance costs are going to be a little higher than you think they are. And you might say, well, I'm not going to make very much money then. Then it's probably a bad deal. Like, you know what I mean? If you handcuff yourself to where the only way the deal works is if you do all the work 100% of the time, all the maintenance 100% of the time, it's a bad deal. Yeah. That's a recipe for burnout. So that's what we talk about. You actually have to be profitable to survive. You got to be profitable without you doing the work 100% of the time.
Yeah, that's good. Well said. I'm not going to say anything more on that. Number 2 is businesses measure everything. You cannot manage what you do not measure.
Come on.
You can't manage what you don't measure. So I'm going to give you the basic metrics that you should be tracking. If you're not doing this, you need to start doing it now. Number 1 is vacancy. This can be open units, or this is like the average time that it takes you to re-rent something. There's physical vacancy and there's economical vacancy. I won't go into it right now. You can Google it if you want to. But you need to know your physical vacancy. How many open units do I have? How many occupieds do I have? And then how many average days does it take me to re-rent these? And that shows you the lost income that you are incurring by delaying getting that back on the market. Fun fact for you, one of the biggest expenses for any investor is vacancy. So it's a huge one you need to track. Number 2 is gross rent roll. So this is more than like, oh, I'm getting $1,000 a month. A lot of the time when you write your leases, you're going to have a base rent, and then you're going to have maybe a pet fee, a utility bill back charge, or some other thing. And you need to have those things itemized so you know what are the granular income drivers to your property, not just what the aggregate rent is. So you need to have a gross rent roll, break that down into how that's being billed. Number 3 is property-specific expenses. And here's the reason you need to understand this. Not every property performs the same. If I have a duplex and I have a single-family house, there are some expenses I will have over here that won't translate the same over here. I might have a duplex, but it still has one driveway. Right. So my expenses are less per unit for that. So you need to know, like, what are the poor performers in your portfolio?
Right. What's sucking the most resources? What's giving you the least ROI? And it's going to differ between if you have like a 2002 duplex and like a 1900 duplex.
Yeah, maintenance costs are going to be way different.
You might see like, oh my gosh, like even though the cash flow is so much better on this old duplex because I got it cheaper and it, worse neighborhood and all this stuff. But if the expense starts getting out of control and you're replacing plumbing every year and you're replacing cast iron and every year it's something because it's a really old asset, it might not be as much cash flow as you thought it was.
Right. No, that's good. That's good. Number 3 is businesses have a business plan that they execute. This may sound duh, but a lot of people are like, I want to invest in real estate. And you think about the first property, but you don't have a 1 year, a 3 year, or a 5 year goal. And that's okay if you don't have a 5 year goal starting out. I would encourage you to, at least have something because you learn as you go. But you need to have a business plan. Otherwise, you're going to have this shotgun approach in terms of investing, and you're going to chase any deal, every deal. And some of that is just the nature of being green and getting started in the game. But you have to have some kind of a direction to head in.
And sometimes that's what it takes to get started.
Right.
Sometimes you got to just get out there and do it. And then that will in turn help you figure out what do you want to do? Yeah. What kind of deals do you want to go after?
And I think there's a difference between having a goal and it changing along the way and not having a goal at all.
Yeah. Yep.
And that's absolutely been kind of where I've been at. At first I was like, oh, I want to start in real estate investing. And then it kind of morphed. I was like, okay, well, I want to buy and hold because I'm interested in passive income. Well, right there, I've already delineated and drilled down a little bit further. How do I want to invest in real estate? I didn't want to do flipping. So I started looking for properties that were going to cash flow. We bought a 5 unit. It was bringing in money. We started doing that again. And then now my goals have changed a little bit from the activity of pursuing that. But when you pick a goal, it will pull you in that direction, which is why it's really important to have one. Mm-hmm. Next one is they have a core focus. Businesses have a core focus, and they know what to say yes to, and they know what to say no to. Now, this comes along the way, kind of like our previous point. But here it is. The winners in life are good at saying no. Everyone else is good at saying yes. And it's a matter of focus. This is something I've felt more in my personal life even, and business, is focus. Do you have any comments on that?
Yeah, I think it's just hard to have a concept for that when you're getting started. So like if you're just getting started, maybe the focus is, I just need to buy a piece of real estate. And that's the focus. You're saying no to like buying a new car, upgrading your personal home or your house,
or 401k,
clothes, or 401 or whatever. That's your focus. But if you're like, man, I really want to do real estate and I actually want to scale something and I actually want to create a business, then you're going to have to look within the realm of real estate and say, what do I want to do? Because you can't really build a successful business on the onset of saying, well, maybe I'll wholesale this. Maybe I'm going to try to flip this. And I've never flipped before, but maybe I'm going to flip that and then I'll, buy and hold this. And then you're just scattered. And sure, it can work and someone could do it. It's just going to be a lot of headache, and what we've seen more often than not is that it's more of a negative than a positive. Mm-hmm. And it's cool to get different experiences and figure out what you want to do. But once you kind of figure that out, it's honing in on it.
We as real estate investors have the proverbial shiny object syndrome. So everybody's been at a real estate investment meetup before, and somebody tells about like how they made like 60 grand of instant cash.
I just had this.
You're like, maybe I'm doing the wrong strategy. You rethink everything.
We had on our podcast, Angel, he spoke about his short-term rentals in Hocking Hills.
Yeah.
And just like for like a month or 2 months, I was just like, I'm going to do that.
Yeah.
And then like, I was like, it's just not realistic right now. That's not my focus. I need to focus on what's in front of me, the properties that I have right now, my business. But like, it was just like, it was like a switch that flipped.
I remember he told us, he's like, yeah, you can buy some really sick properties in Costa Rica. I don't know why I had to do the accent. I always do the accent. And I was like, crap, I need to be looking in Costa Rica. Like, that's where the money's at, is in Costa Rica. And then I was like, I'm not going to buy a property in Costa Rica.
Yeah.
So everybody gets caught up in that like shiny object syndrome. But the reason you get caught up in it is because real estate investing is all about delayed gratification.
Yeah.
I'm going to do a whole podcast on real estate investing is not sexy. Like, it is the least sexiest way to make money. It really is.
Until you're there, and then it looks really good.
And then you look like a baller.
Yeah.
But for the 9 years preceding the 10th year, you were poor, broke, driving like a rusted out Jeep.
Yeah.
Like, I don't even know.
I think it's probably like that for a lot of businesses.
That's true. Maybe that's
Jeff
just
Bezos,
life.
there's an interview of him when he was already a billionaire. And he was driving like a Toyota Camry.
I drive a Toyota Camry.
Yeah, it might have been a Toyota Corolla, actually.
I drive a Corolla.
Well, but he was living below his means and grinding, you know? So anyway, interesting.
I'm sorry.
We got off there.
We did. Last one here is businesses use systems and people to replicate outcomes and run efficiently.
And this could be a whole podcast.
Yeah, for sure. It really could.
It could be like a whole book. There are books. There are entire books and podcasts dedicated to this.
Hey, we should do a podcast sometime about how we've implemented systems to our real estate investing business. Like, or to our agent side.
Yeah. Kind of dissect that. So
it's a good one.
But yeah, no, if you are running a business, and we had said this earlier, if you're running a business, it should be able to eventually operate without you. If it cannot operate without you, you have a job.
Yeah.
Okay. So there we go. So that's why just for you to have a framework, when we talk about systems are something that a person can run that will run the business for you. And so that's where maybe some employees come in, or vendors or partners, and they will run and work within your system that you've created, and it does it for you so you don't have to do it.
Yeah.
And so like, perfect example of this would be like if you have property management software. Well, you can set up systems within most property management softwares to sign leases, collect rent, and manage expenses. That is a system. So if you would take the time to learn the property management software and learn how to do it, all you need to do is set it up one time, and then it's a system that you can just replicate that for every unit, every tenant. You can sign leases digitally. There's no more like running around and you're trying to collect rent and trying to, do all this crazy stuff. You're making it way harder. Sure, takes a little bit of work on the front end to get set up. And then even the next iteration of that, then you hire someone else to do that for you. You hire them to work your property management software. So they're the ones posting the units for lease, right? They're maybe posting on social media, apartments.com. They're the ones sending out the leases to get signed. They're the ones making sure that tenants are paying and following up with tenants and taking the maintenance requests. And you start building this system out so you don't have to be the one to do that. And so that's really kind of 101 level. And maybe it's a virtual assistant, maybe it's a real assistant, or maybe you just hire out a property management company, and that's part of your system.
Yeah, that's legitimate. So here are some systems that we're talking about. On the property management software side of things, if you're small, starting out, I'm going to say 1 to 20, 1 to 30 units, Rent Ready. Rent Ready is probably one of the most user-friendly, basic level, entry-level things that will
easy.
Save you so much time and automate and systematize everything related to managing your own properties.
So easy. And it's cheap.
It is very cheap.
I think maybe they raised it to like $15 a month or something.
Dude, $15 a month, that's nothing.
But yeah, I mean, So I mean, if you even have like one property, like my brother has one property, I was like, it's worth it. Like you should get it because you don't have to worry about how you're collecting rent, how you're recording rent, how anything. I mean, it's just, you got it. So definitely worth it.
If you're bigger than that, you're like probably 30 units or plus. AppFolio is a good one. And then there's a host of others that you can go look at. QuickBooks. QuickBooks is great. That's definitely a business kind of application. And I deal with that more in the commercial side of things. But personally, we use that for my partnership with my in-laws and my wife and I. And that is a really robust tool. There are back-end accounting services in some of the property management stuff, so you can rely on that. You don't have to have QuickBooks. And then Excel. Excel is a great one. I use Excel so much for rent rolls, personal financial statement, cash flow analysis, pro formas. It's a great tool if you're not using it. And then I would just say digital templates. So like leases, notices, rental increases, addendums, things that you're going to be using on a recurring basis that you need to have in a Word document form or some kind of digital template that you can reproduce consistently so that you're not spending added time shuffling paper or creating a document from scratch. And the last one I would say from a system perspective is the utilization of ACH or digital payment. This is really a game changer. So we have a blend of tenants that pay through ACH, digital payment, and then like a cash check. Mm-hmm. A lot of businesses and commercial tenants will not pay ACH because they want to manage their cash flow from a business perspective, whereas residentially, as consumers, we just want to set something and forget it. So we collect a lot of our commercial payments still in cash, and that's the most hassle out of all of my stuff. Yeah. But using Rent Ready, I'll get a notification that a withdrawal has been initiated from the tenant's account. And then that triggers for me who hasn't paid through the app. And it allows me to follow up and kind of figure that out.
Great reminder. Yep.
So
awesome. So those were kind of our tips on how to go about running a business or real estate as a business. So those are kind of some tactical ways you can evaluate, hey, how am I doing my stuff? And then what are the things that I can change to make it more efficient and then to relieve me of a lot of the responsibilities that you're probably taking unnecessarily that are going to lead to burnout. So go back and review that. We are going to go into our little nuggets.
All right, so this is part of our show where we give one practical takeaway or piece of advice for you, our listeners, that you can implement to your real estate investing business. Man, we gave a lot on this one. I didn't know we were going to do this, so we'll cut this part out.
My biggest, we don't know. We're just gonna have it. No, it's just gonna be reiterating what we just said. The lowest barrier thing that you could do to like just totally upgrade your property management is get something like Rent Ready. I mean, even if just for the fact of collecting payments from your tenants, because it gives them an app and they can just pay you through the app, just that, you will feel a huge difference if you are out there running and getting checks or worrying about them paying cash, and then you have to go to your bank to deposit it. And there's so many added steps. This cuts it all out, goes directly from them into your bank account. So that is my little nugget. It is $15. So for $15, you can upgrade your property management. And of course, that's super low level. If you guys are above that, tough luck. go listen to the other
if you
points.
use the code Garrett and Seth, you get a pretty big discount. So
yeah,
I'm just kidding. There's no discount.
There's no discount.
We're not getting paid to promote them, and they're really good though, and I would totally use it. Okay, let's give one book recommendation each, and then we'll end this episode. So right now, I've been reading $100 Million Offers by Alex Hormozi. Did not know who this guy was like a month ago, not because of him, but because I live under a rock. But really good in terms of, again, he uses this phrase, operationalize things. How do you take something and systematize it so you can replicate success? So if you're in a sales industry, you're figuring out how to scale a business, I would encourage that book. I know it's been really beneficial for me. So
yeah, the book that I would recommend is The E-Myth Revisited by Michael Gerber. Great book. A lot of the kind of the core principles of what we've been talking about here, I mean, he talks about in his book in depth, but it's how to, if you're an entrepreneur, how to run a business and how to like make it last and how not to be a statistic of most businesses failing. So great book. They also have different series out for kind of some different specific like sectors. So like there's an E-Myth for real estate agents, and that one was also really good. That kind of put us on a different trajectory for our real estate agent business specifically. So yeah, either of those would be grand slams for you to read.
I want to end with this because this is kind of the theme of the podcast for this episode, and it's working harder and working smarter are two very different things. There's a lot of guys out there, guys and gals, that are working very hard. You're putting the work in. You're doing what you need to do on the business side of things in terms of effort. That's not the problem. The problem you have is working smarter, doing the right things, and systematizing stuff. And there's plenty of people that work hard that fail. And so it's not enough just to do that. But it is a good starting point. So don't be the statistic and implement these things. We'll catch you next time. As always, excited that you joined us for another episode of the Reinvest Podcast. Stay tuned every Tuesday for new episodes. And if you want to learn how you can use your hard-earned capital to diversify into real estate, go to our website, lv5capital.com, and shoot us a message. Move farther, reach higher, and grow deeper. We'll see you next time.